Is up. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching on replay, stick around. We're going to get into our usual system recap stuff. But going live for the first time in quite a while. Got to get back in the flow. I have a new setup here. I've moved my entire office recently. As many of you know, I was up at the North Shore, got my new North Shore shirt on, rocking that. So the Twins game, this their second game of their doubleheader, is in progress right now. It's the top of the eighth inning. The Twins and A's are tied at 7. Um, was not expecting this to be the schedule when I scheduled this live stream, but Sunday evenings are kind of what works on these. So we're just going to roll with it. And again, just going to jump right into kind of some usual um, system recap stuff and kind of share some things. So bear with me just a moment here. We're going to take a look just at some numbers. Again, the Twins are currently playing game 2 of their doubleheader against Oakland. But here are some notable hitting performances from across the minor leagues. Like we look at Matt Wallner with 2 home runs. We're going to talk a little bit more about him in a moment. But a 2-homer game for Matt Wallner. 2-homer games for everybody today. Nate Baez also had 2 homers for the Colonels. Aaron Sabato hit a home run for the Wind Surge. But here you see these are the notable hitting performances from today on the minor league side. We'll have some major league highlights for you in a moment, but don't have anything from the minor league side for this evening. Moving on over to the pitching performances. Here are all these starts from today. Caleb Bosley, who we've seen kind of make some cameos with the Twins, pitched well for the Saints again. Not really lighting the world on fire or anything, but pitching well for them. It's great to see him continue to do that. Jalen Nowlin, though, man, 8 one-hit innings. He's a lefty, which I think makes him particularly intriguing. Not a guy who always has great command, but threw a ton of strikes today. Only 84 pitches to get through 8 innings. Ty Langenberg, who was recently promoted, got through 5 innings, struck out 7. And then you see the Muscles. Unfortunately, was not the best showing for the Muscles today. Here are the results. Again, that second Twins game is in progress, but the Twins won game 1. Saints, Wind Surge, and Colonels both all won. Mighty Muscles lost both of their games of their doubleheader today. So just a lot of games going on. And made reference to the fact that we were going to talk a little bit more about Matt Wallner. I want to call out some of these performances from over the last 30 days on the St. Paul Saints, because not all of these guys have been playing well. In particular, Junior Severino has been struggling this season. But my God, look at what he's done over the last 30 days. Matt Wallner hitting 11 home runs over the last 30 days is absolutely insane. But Junior Severino has somehow topped him over that span. He only has 7 homers compared to that 11. But this is a guy who has some really big issues with plate appearance, plate discipline. 22 strikeouts against 19 walks for Junior Severino. So getting on base a ton, a .495 on base percentage over the last 30 days for Junior Severino. So he's been remarkable. And then Michael Hellman, the guy I want to call out too, has been really good over the last 30 days for the Saints. Do have some Twins highlights pulled up here. We'll take a look at game 1 first. Let's see here. Is that what we want? Let's try that. There we go. So again, the Twins won the first game of their doubleheader. It is currently tied to 7-7 in the top of the 8th inning in game 2. They're wearing those new City Connect jerseys in game 1, and Carlos Correa hit 2 home runs. He's on fire, absolutely on fire entering today. Hits 2 home runs to sort of put a cherry on top of this insane June he's having so far. And also Royce Lewis homered an opposite field home run, which is something we're seeing a little bit more of now. But back when he was a prospect in the minors, he only had pull power. Of course, he was a 19-year-old kid still growing into his adult body. So not all that unusual, but Royce Lewis going to the opposite field again. That was in game 1 of today's doubleheader. Again, game 2 is still in progress. Let's take a look at some highlights from earlier in this game 2. Again, Royce Lewis once again here with his second home run into the day. Again, it was a great day for 2 home runs, even though Royce's were in 2 separate games. He homers. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But this looked like a home run off the bat. But check this out, Austin Martin. Oh my God. The bullpen reaction was pretty great on that one too. Wow. Robs a home run. My goodness. Austin Martin. That's putting a smile on my face right now. It's been so much fun to be able to watch him in the big leagues. And he's still kind of putting everything together. Austin Martin is. And, he's a little raw. He missed a lot of time. He kind of struggled. He got pushed to Double-A immediately. That's where he debuted in the minor leagues, was in Double-A with Toronto's system. And I think just there's a lot of things that kind of tripped him up. Talking about guys' minor league journeys. And it's really fun to see him kind of coming into his own. Still a rough around the edges in center field at times because that was a position where basically Toronto split him between there and shortstop his first pro year. But then when the Twins had him, he really mainly played short. They were really trying to make that work before they kind of gave up on that last year. And he missed a ton of time last year with an elbow injury. So it's been a lot for him to overcome. So it's really fun to see him putting things together and making that insane catch. So we are now in the bottom of the 8th inning, and it's tied 7-7 in game 2. Just want to call out Royce Lewis again. 2 home runs today so far. I mean, I shouldn't shouldn't seal that up with this game in progress, but Sarah Langs, who just shares so many great little tidbits and pieces of information on Twitter, shouting out that Royce's 7 home runs are the most by a player in his first 12 games of a season in the Twins/Senators history. 7 home runs in 12 games. Obviously, it's kind of weird to contextualize it because he missed so much time. But my goodness, Royce Lewis. Wow. Bringing up the chat here. I can still do that. So if you got anything you'd like to discuss, Leo here calls out that Stamont just had a 1-2-3 inning all strikeouts, which Josh Stamont's been pitching great. Let's see. He's got it. Yeah. Tremendous so far, but he's not striking out that many guys. He's got a 0 ERA. But I think this was coming into today, 10 strikeouts in 14 2/3 innings. So not missing as many bats as we were used to seeing him with back when he was with the Royals, but pitching great. Completely different guy. Even though he used to strike out more guys with the Royals, he also was walking a ton more guys. So the Twins have gotten so much better, such better command from him so far this season. So we, again, was hoping to have this be a free space of everyone's evening. Not sure how longer we'll live stream for. I know Major League Baseball doesn't love this. And if you are closely following the channel, I've gotten into some copyright claim trouble with them of late as well. So Ben says, love the show. What are your thoughts on Correa? I mean, I think he's incredible. Last year, didn't live up to certainly his standards or the contract. That's always going to be part of the conversation, no matter what. But was injured. And I think it's pretty clear how much that sapped him. Still looked good in the field, but not as good as usual. And yeah, I think he is very special at shortstop. Watching him throw is, oh man, just like worth the price of admission on some days when he makes some of the tougher plays. He's remarkable in the field, especially with his arm. And now, yeah, he's hitting, as of right now, he's hitting .310 with an .882 OPS. That's an all-star, potentially like MVP type player when you're putting up those numbers as a shortstop. So loving it. It does feel like, to be honest, when we can nitpick, when there's a guy making as much money as him, that's always going to be part of the conversation, and we can get nitpicky as good as he's been. It does feel like he's kind of not showed up as much against the teams the Twins need him to show up against. So I would like to see that turn around, but super satisfied with Correa. And yeah, he's just been lightning in a bottle this month. White hot. Dan asks about Matt Wallner. It feels like Matt Wallner should be called up soon. I mean, he is lighting it up. But there's a lot of guys who were struggling earlier with the Twins who are playing really well of late. And some of these guys still have poor year-to-date numbers. Manuel Margot's year-to-date numbers are pretty poor, but he's really turned things around. Carlos Santana's year-to-date numbers are actually kind of picking up the way he's played of late. Both of those guys have been really good lately. Actually, maybe that's something we could pull up here and discuss a little bit. But yeah, it feels like Matt Wallner deserves a call up. But the tricky thing for me is that I just think this is sort of part of who he is. He's going to be really streaky. Matt Wallner, we're talking about here. So, it's going to be kind of tricky for you if you're not going to be willing to ride out the cold streaks and just try to capitalize on the hot streaks. I'm not saying that can't, it's going to be tough to anticipate that. I'm not saying that can't be the approach, but it's going to be tricky. Let me see. Let me get this so it looks all right. And then I'm going to pull up over on Fangraphs. I have pulled up the Twin stats over the last, 30 days? Is that what we want here? Let's see. Yeah. Just a sec while I get that squared away. Oh, looks like Jose Miranda hit a pinch hit home run. All right. Nice. Pinch hitting for Trevor Larnach. Yeah, everybody hates the pinch hitting for the platoon advantage. How does everybody feel about that one? I'm not saying everybody, but now it's more of a conversation with a guy like Edouard Julien. Let's see here. Nice. So Twins are leading 8-7 in the bottom of the 8th, thanks to a Jose Miranda go-ahead pinch hit home run. Awesome. All right. Yeah, and the Dan does call out that the Twins seems like they could use another left-handed bat. They are a little bit more right-handed than they've been, certainly, and that's why some people thought that instead of Austin Martin, it would have been Matt Wallner coming up. And I thought that would have made sense, but they decided to go with Martin. And I think Martin brings a different element to the team too. We saw that incredible catch. He's such a good base runner and such a confident base stealer. I think along with Willie Castro, he's one of the really, really good base runners on the team. And there's some value in that with Austin Martin. So what I've got pulled up here on Fangraphs is the stats over the last 30 days, just to kind of talk about some of these guys who are playing well. Again, Manuel Margot with a 161 WRC plus. So he's been 61% above league average over the last 30 days. He's hitting 340 with a 426 on base and a 468 slugging. Is Manuel Margot with more walks than strikeouts over the last 30 days. Of course, it's only 54 plate appearances because the Twins do like to mix and match and platoon and use everybody. So it's not like he's been playing every day, but he's really hit of late. Carlos Santana, too, another guy who was in a lot of discussions about being sent down. Pardon me. He's been really good. Also with more walks and strikeouts over the last 30 days. He has a 130 WRC plus, 263 average, a 356 on base percentage, and a 434 slugging. 3 homers over that span and 87 plate appearances. So both of those guys that had kind of been dragging the lineup down have been a couple of the better hitters on the team over the last 30 days. Jose Miranda up here. We just heard that he had hit his pinch hit home run to put the Twins up. So that's great. Willie's just been a consistent contributor all year. That's great. Kyle Farmer, another guy who's struggled. He's not playing a ton, but he has a 122 WRC plus over the last 30 days, hitting 294. So that's great. Kirilloff, of course, he got sent down. And then you got Buxton, Larnach, Kepler, Vasquez, Jeffers, who's really struggling, and Julien, who of course got sent down. So this ties into some of the other discussion I was possibly going to talk about today. Didn't prepare a lot for it though, but I was probably going to talk some about the trade deadline and potentially what the Twins would be looking for, because it is kind of this weird situation where I think the Twins have a lot of general depth. I think they have a lot of guys in their 40-man roster. Like, we should see Matt Wallner again. We should see Edouard Julien again. There's a lot of guys. Hopefully we see Alex Kirilloff again. Louis Varland, I think, pitched pretty well. Yeah, I've been kind of a little distracted during this game. But yeah, Louis Varland, didn't light things up, and it's Oakland, so you got to take it with a grain of salt, but came out of the bullpen and threw 4 1/3 innings, 2 runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts. Of course, he has a lot of kind of momentum to build. He hasn't really been pitching super great with the Saints, but he's there. David Festa is banging down the door, man. Wow, David Festa is really gaining momentum. Of course, he's not on the 40-man roster yet. My point is, there's all these guys. Brock Stewart should be coming back before too long. So it's like the Twins have a ton of options and pieces. But they're certainly far from some kind of a perfect team that can't be improved upon. Festa is not on the 40-man, but I think it would be not too much of a challenge to fix that situation. Heading into the top of the 9th now. Interesting. They're putting Buxton out to play center instead of Austin Martin. And Griffin Jax is coming in. All right. So it's like the Twins don't really have a lot of things that they really need along the margins, which is kind of, to be honest, when you're a team that's kind of in a wild card spot, which the Twins are now. Of course, a lot can change between now and the deadline. But when you're in that situation, there's not a lot of urgency to like really go for a top guy. To add like an ace, to add like a middle of the order bat, to add a closer. But those are the kind of things that the Twins could really use. They don't really need all that many other guys along the margins. Max calls out the bullpen. I think, Duran's been kind of streaky, is how I would put it. And it's easy to forget that he missed a good chunk of the early part of the season. I think he's struggling a little bit with feel. And that's kind of in my estimation. And I think that's going to come. I'm not really all that concerned about him finding himself eventually. So I feel good about him. Jax, of course, has been, his consistent self we've seen the last couple of years. And then Stewart, you do have to take into account that Brock Stewart's been really injury prone, but that guy is, definitely a back end of the bullpen arm when he's healthy now. So, can you bank on him? That's tough. But he's progressing to get closer. I do think the left side is where the Twins probably could really especially use an upgrade. That's sort of the most likely spot I think they will target. Okert has been doing a pretty solid job generally. He's had his moments where it's been a struggle, but Caleb Thielbar is really not finding himself right now. He's really up against it. Funderburk, he's there. He's in the mix. He's sort of adding to that conversation of that's another guy in the mix who, is an option. He has a depth piece. I like him as a depth piece, but he's not a top of the roster type guy. Definitely feel better about him as the second lefty than, a first lefty for sure. And, I could maybe say the same thing about Okert. Would really feel good about him as the second lefty instead of the first lefty. So that's definitely a spot that the Twins could focus on. Yeah, I think I don't think the A's closer is going anywhere. Was Mason Miller? Is that his name? I think they're going to hold on to him. He's been, I think his strikeout rate is around 50%. It's insane. That game recently that he and Duran threw, and it was like it had to have been like the most pitches over 101 miles per hour thrown in a game. Just insane, those two guys. Yeah, it would be just sort of speaking on that in general. It would be hard for me to imagine the Twins targeting a guy like that. Like a guy that's really going to be a go for it trade, but I could be wrong. I was kind of surprised the Twins didn't do more last year when they were in first place. And it kind of felt like it was more of like hey, let's add some more pieces to a potentially championship team. Now Just because you're in the wild card doesn't mean you can't go deep. Both of the World Series participants last year were wild card teams, so keep that in mind. But that's the vibe that I get again from the outside looking in, is that the Twins aren't really going to. I wouldn't imagine push that hard to go after sort of top guys in free agency. But rentals, what about rentals? Those guys don't cost as much, even when they're really great players. You know, some of these other names that are young and great, um, that's going to be a different story. But somebody who I've been talking about for quite a while as a potential Twins target is Pete Alonso. You know, a right-handed hitting first baseman, probably more of a DH, but he has really even platoon splits, hits righties about as good as he hits lefties. He's in the last year of team control. So I don't know that the Mets, and the Mets are in rough shape. I expect him to get traded, and it might take less than you would imagine because he's a pending free agent. A lot of these guys with only 1 year of team control, kind of you look at the packages to get him, and it's like, oh, wow, they only had to give up that. So these GMs and these teams are really putting a lot of stock into how much team control are you trading with the player in these deals. I don't think it's particularly likely that the Twins would get Pete Alonso, but I would love that as an ad. You know, there's a bunch of, top of the rotation type starting pitchers too. That would be amazing. Yes, but as far as like just depth guys, I think the Twins are pretty well covered there. You know, would like to see Paddock be more consistent. Would like to see Ober be more consistent too. Man, with Joe Ryan stepping up this year, Pablo, kind of on the same lines as we were talking about with Duran. I expect Pablo to step up and be himself at some point. It gets tough saying that after a while. But Pablo has not looked nearly as good as he did last year. He's got a 5.33 ERA so far. But some of the peripherals, look pretty darn good. So, I think it's only a matter of time before he finds himself. Like, that's kind of tough to say after 14 starts. It's a pretty big sample that we've seen of him not pitching very well, giving up a lot of home runs, is Pablo Lopez. But, I still believe in him. Oh, it looks like that's it. All right. Twins win 8-7. Jose Miranda. Very nice. With the pinch hit go-ahead home run. Yeah, and another thing, just I wanted to call out on a guy like Pete Alonso is the Twins don't really have a DH. So even if, Carlos Santana mentioned that he's playing better, really appreciate his defense, by the way. Not the biggest fan of that addition, not the biggest fan of him, his game at this point. But he plays first base really well. He's been, as we looked at earlier, he's been hitting well lately. But I just think, a big power bat would be potentially a nice guy to slot in there. Another guy in the Mets, JD Martinez, is kind of in that same situation. The Mets really, I think he's only on a 1 year contract. The Mets really don't have any incentive to keep him, but he is much more of a lefty slaughterer, and not as good against righties, which, not that the Twins can't use that. They certainly could use that too, but, and he's strictly a DH. But JD Martinez, that was a guy I was hoping the Twins would pursue this offseason. But they did not. So, yeah, all right. If you missed out and you're just joining us, not sure we'll be streaming too much longer, but I wanted to get a stream in here, and just kind of get into the flow. Again, this is a new setup. I don't think I've streamed since preseason, since the Polanco trade, and would like to get back in the flow of doing these every Sunday. So we kind of started it off with a lot of highlights of the first game and then part of the second game of the Twins, and then discussed the minor league slate and the performances. We might as well throw those back up here, actually. Well, while we're chatting, you can look at those. So the notable hitting performances from the minor leagues from today. While I go and try to do something here. See Matt Wallner going off. And then the starting pitching performances on the minor league side. as well. Let's see. I'm gonna push it. I'm gonna see if I might get in trouble or not. I always I always like to push the envelope a little bit with Major League Baseball. But here comes Jose Miranda's go ahead home run in the bottom of the 8th inning.
Ball hard his first time up. Sends this one in the air to left field and deep. Back it goes! Twins take the lead! He hit the ball hard in the 6th. Hit the ball even harder in the 8th.
Upper deck shot. Man, awesome. Pinch hit home run to put the Twins up. Twins win 8-7. Twins sweep the doubleheader. You don't see that often in the majors, especially. And I know it's Oakland, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But Twins now 40-32 on the season. Where does that put them in the division now? So Twins now 5.5 back of Cleveland. Wow, only a half game back of the Royals. 5.5 back of Cleveland. They've won 5 in a row. They're 7-3 over the last 10. Man, is anybody else just like exhausted at the pace of this season? Gosh, what a roller coaster ride, up and down. They're great. They're terrible. They're on a winning streak. Then they can't win a game. Oh man, it's been insane. I think this pretty fit. The record is pretty fitting though. 40-32, 8 games above 500. They've looked better. They've looked worse, certainly. But I think that's a pretty fitting record. Again, still 5.5 back of Cleveland, but within striking distance. And I'm pretty sure that team's schedule gets more difficult as the season progresses, I believe. And only half game behind the Royals. And of course, still in the wild card anyway, in a wild card spot. If the season ended today, the Twins would be the final wild card. They have a 3-game advantage over Boston for that spot. It's still very early to be kind of having these kind of conversations. There's so much of the season left. We're not even at the halfway point yet. We're getting close, but not quite at the halfway point. But like to see this team's fight. And when they have had those down periods, they are bouncing back. And we do kind of have to keep in mind who the opponents are in some of these stretches. Would have liked to have seen them play better against winning teams. They're only 12-21 against teams with a 500 record or better. That certainly doesn't feel good. Kind of have to take that as a piece of the reality of this team. They have not been able to beat good teams. So that doesn't make you feel great, but I think this team still has really good upside. And I'm curious to see what they do at the deadline. Last year's deadline doesn't have me super optimistic that they're going to be doing a ton. But yeah, Sean points out the division is so winnable. It's a 5.5 game differential now. That's a pretty big deficit to overcome. But the Guardians, are they really a 638 win percentage team? What does that work out to over 162 games? That's a really good team. I don't think so. Don't tell any Guardians fans. They'll come in here. It's a 103 win pace. This Cleveland team is not a 103 win team. They are not going to be as good in the second half of the season as they have been. I can pretty much guarantee you that. And they have some guys coming back from injury that should help them out. But I don't know. Their bullpen has been remarkable. That's been a big part of how they've done this. But I think they're going to come back down a little bit. There's a question about Buxton. Is he ever going to return to all-star form? That is such a X factor of this team. When he is playing well, this is a really, really good team. If he plays like he did that all-star season, but it's just not been there. And, last year he was so banged up, he couldn't play the field. This year he's back in the field, but he's not hitting. He's always been a really aggressive guy at the plate, not going to be taking a lot of walks, not going to be getting on base a ton. But we've seen him be productive with that being the case. But yeah, just not really showing it yet. Hopefully, we do see that. He has played better of late. but not to that all-star potential that we've seen from him before. Yeah, and someone calls out 6-1 versus the A's and Rockies. Exactly what we needed to do. Yep, they need to keep kind of dominating these types of teams. Leo calls out that he's really like Corey Provus. I miss him on the radio a lot. Chris Atterbury is solid. They're mixing up the booth a lot in the radio with Dan Gladden. I appreciate Dazzle and some of what he brings to the table, but it's also been nice to hear some of Glenn Perkins and Paul Molitor on the radio. But yeah, Corey Provus is the man. Miss Dick Bramer too, of course. Had a certain style and just was the voice of the Twins for so long. But Corey is really good. Really good. I don't think it's going to take 100 wins to answer Todd. I don't think it's going to take 100 wins to win the division. I don't. I have a hard time believing that. I think Cleveland's going to. I think they're not going to fall off, but I think they're going to slow down. I'm not a believer in the Royals. I'm sorry. They're playing so much better than I thought they would. And their run differential suggests that they could be even better than they are for their record, but I just don't believe in them. So I'm sorry. I can't. This is why I gotta bite my tongue, like on Twitter and other things where I don't talk about these other teams all that often. But yeah, if only they invested some more into the roster. Yeah, I mean it's a deep roster. It's a deep roster, I feel like, for the Twins, but yeah, they're not really doing anything in the offseason, is going to come back to bite them. I think it already has a little bit. Some of these guys they added are starting to turn around. Early in the stream, we talked about Carlos Santana and Manuel Margot and how they're playing better of late. But, a little bit could have gone a long way for sure. Yeah, Nick is guessing maybe more closer to 90 to 95 wins. Yeah, I would project probably closer to more than 90, but maybe not quite 95. Definitely not 100 would be my guess. But again, Cleveland's on pace right now for 103 wins. So they've been great. And I think that also kind of is a good reminder of, yes, the Twins are in third place, but they are now 40-32, a 556 winning percentage. They are sitting in a wild card spot. They have a 3-game lead in the wild card spot. What is that? What are they on pace for right now? The Twins are on pace for 90 wins. That's not. That's a playoff team. You typically would be pretty unusual with this playoff format for a 90-win team to not make the playoffs. I'm sure it can happen, but yeah. So just because Cleveland and Kansas City have gotten off to a great start, the Twins are right there, playing well. Yeah, now that Royce Lewis is back, that feels like a big time game changer. I can't imagine he's going to keep up this pace, which is like I think he's on pace to hit like 90 home runs or something crazy. I think we can comfortably say that he's not going to reach that point, but the team, he's just and his personality too. Him as a person, he's a game changer. Absolutely. All right. Well, we did the usual kind of system recap stuff earlier in the stream. So if you missed that, you can watch the replay. Talked about the Twins win, the Twins sweep today, beat Oakland twice. So I think we're going to kind of close up shop there. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I'm going to try to do this every Sunday. I'm going to try to do the live streams every Sunday. And, when the Twins don't have a doubleheader, I'll be able to have a bit more focused agenda. But I think we'll do it like this to where we'll kind of lead in with a lot of the standard system recap stuff, and then I'll kind of have a topic to bite into, and then we'll do some chat at the end. Guessing next week, probably maybe I'll talk a little bit more about trade deadline stuff. That'll probably be a recurring theme. The draft is also coming up. I don't do a whole lot of preview on the draft, and especially since the Twins don't have as high a pick. Probably won't be digging into that much before the draft, but certainly we'll talk a lot about the draft class after it happens. So that's coming up too. So just a lot of fun stuff to talk about on the horizon beyond just individual games like we do in the system recaps. But want to thank everybody for coming and hanging out. And you have a good rest of the evening.